Hey y'all, Mac here. I understand that a lot of people are struggling with Frostwalker, and honestly, I think the best way to play this is just to learn the mechanic and to actually go through it once. But at the same time, coming from a lot of games where mechanics can be extremely punishing, if not borderline BS, I do believe that sometimes avoiding the mechanic is the right solution. Thus, I am making a guide on how to solo Frostwalker, or at least carry the damage for Frostwalker using Ultimate LEPIC. Alright guys, before I get into the strategy, there's two things I want to make very clear. First off, the damage that's going out onto the boss is kind of variable based on your teammates. I was doing some testing with full carry runs where people only took aggro of the boss and didn't really put that much damage into him, and thus not filling his frenzy, and that way LEPIC is able to two-phase this using this setup. However, at the same time, you might get publics that put too much frenzy into the boss without breaking, and thus gimp your damage before you can really get it fully ramped. This can cause issues, either extending the fight and making it a race against time, or it can just straight out break your run if you don't do the mechanics at the time. As such, the strategy is not a 100% foolproof method of killing him before his mechanic. It definitely wasn't for me. However, there are a couple solutions to the problems that may arise from variable teammates or from your own poor usage of his ulti. Okay, so what exactly is this strategy? Well, it's not anything too different as to how you would approach the fight using this setup, but there are some ways you can cheese it to get multiple ulti usage, as well as to really get as much damage into the boss as possible at the right timings. So at the very start of the fight, you're looking to burst the boss in an attempt to try and put him in the groggy state and get as much damage out during this time as possible. Next, you're going to reset your ulti by jumping off the map and abandoning. This does take a stock out of your team's death count, do be aware of that, and do be aware that if you have teammates who are very squishy or who are prone to dying, this method may end up in a fail. Next, you have your ulti again. The boss should be in its immunity phase, and during this time, you're going to be focusing on the little weak points on the legs. Lepic's Q is pretty good at dealing with these, and you do have to be pretty precise when you throw it, but if you do hit it, it does save you a lot of time as it should one-shot these weak points. After the boss comes out of this, he should be in a groggy state, which should make your ulti deal quite a lot more damage using ambush. And after that, if the boss isn't dead and he goes into a second immunity, that's when it becomes a race against time. I will demonstrate how both possibilities could turn out. Alright, let's do a scenario where we can two-phase the boss, meaning he only gets one immunity phase, and we can kill him using two uses of our ulti. To start out, it's pretty important to hide behind a pillar or use some sort of cover and let your teammates get aggro of the boss first before you start pumping him. LEPIC is very squishy with this setup, so this is crucial. Potentially aim for weak points to try to get the boss groggy, but just dealing enough damage is usually enough to get him groggy. Once you do so, even if his frenzy bar is full, he will still be taking damage, so put as much damage into him and then immediately go run to the edge and jump off. This will put you into the down state where you have to hold X or whatever button your abandon is to fully die. After dying, you'll notice that your ulti cooldown is refreshed, and during this time the boss is going to be in its immunity phase, running around, and he will have these weak points on his legs. Lepic's Q is pretty good for dealing with this, so use that as you can, but otherwise, these are going to be your priority. Get them down as soon as possible so you don't have to really worry about time at all. At the same time, again, try to avoid aggro as much as possible and dodge around. The boss will enter a groggy state, and at this point, you want to do your full burst combo again and kill the boss. This is the ideal method for this current setup. I don't know if there's really a way to one-phase the boss without him going into the immunity phase besides having multiple lepics. But if someone has found out a way to deal that much damage, please do let me know. Now, let's go over a scenario where you have to three-phase the boss. This can usually happen because you put too much frenzy into the boss, and you aren't able to get him into the groggy state before he phases into his immunity and goes into frenzy. Now this can happen because you either miss shots like I did here, or because your team puts too much damage into him without breaking apart. There's a lot of reasons this could happen. Nevertheless, when this happens, you still want to go look to die as fast as possible to reset your ulti. You'll still want to focus on the weak points as per usual, but now this turns into a fight against time, where you want to be able to do another immunity phase before the 7.5 minute mark. Note that while in Groggy, he can't cast his ice ability, so be sure to really push the timer if you are trying to avoid this mechanic. As Lepic, once you use your second ulti, go ahead and reset again. Note, you will only be allowed this death. Any further death after this will cause the mission to fail, so be very careful and make sure you don't do this if you see your teammates constantly going down or just flat out dying. Once again, getting the weak points here is even more important, and you really want to get these before the 7.5 minute mark. If you can put him into Groggy, you can see that he only has a little bit of HP left, so the ulti guarantees that you are able to kill him when he is put in Groggy before he's able to even get a chance to try and cast his mechanic. Now, sometimes too much damage can actually be a curse. If you aren't able to put the boss into Groggy, sometimes even having 2 lepics can cause the boss to go into his immunity phase before you've even broken his shield. At the same time, having 2 lepics can also lead to you putting him into Groggy and just completely nuking him out of orbit. I've decided to include a clip where 2 lepics allows us to kill the boss before he even enters his intermission phase. Anyways guys, I hope this has demonstrated that there's more than one way to approach an encounter. If you're looking for the setup that I used for this video, be sure to check out my latest build guide on Lepic. It is his overkill build guide, and it focuses on putting as much damage into his 4 as possible. But, until next time, ciao.